What's up, everybody? It's Man of Low Moral Fiber here. My name's Luke, and I've been doing some playing around here with these three Jakobs weapons that I've been enjoying as of late. The Becca, the Maggie, and the Twister. And I did a run through Heroes Pass here, and I wanted to give you guys some of my thoughts and everything on using these three weapons with Zer0. Now keep in mind, I am still fairly inexperienced at using all three of these weapons together. At first, I was a strictly melee player with Zer0, and then I got pretty into sniping, especially with the Malawan snipers like the Pimpernel especially, and the Snider for mobbing. And then I also, obviously got really into using the Lyuda for raid bosses and, sometimes mobbing as well. So I hadn't really put in too much time with non-melee or sniper weapons with Zer0. So I wanted to come here and get in some practice with that, just to kind of diversify my Zer0 playing and everything like that. Obviously, the Twister is very, very powerful with Zer0, especially if you're using a class mod that boosts one shot, one kill, or you're just spec'd into one shot, one kill at all. It ends up working out very, very well for this weapon. And you'll notice that when I get into some serious and kind of dangerous situations here where I need to kill an enemy quickly, the Twister will probably be my go-to weapon most of the time. One thing I did kind of run into when using the three of these weapons is that the Becca and the Maggie have kind of similar effective ranges. Neither of them is very, very excellent at long range. Perhaps I, would be better suited in long range if I had a Muck-a-Muck on me. But with this current skill build I'm using, I'm not spec'd into Critical Ascension. And I just try to keep my range from enemies, within range of the Becca. The Maggie does have a slightly shorter range than the Becca. And so there are definitely times where I still use the Maggie. But I think that it probably is performing least effectively of the three that I'm using. That's not to say that the Maggie doesn't help me or anything like that, but I might be able to adjust the skill build slightly and use a Muck-a-Muck or Skull Masher in place of the Maggie for more range coverage and stuff like that. I am going to use the Becca a little bit here in order to deal with some of these enemies that are a little bit across this bridge. I'm not completely comfortable playing with this playstyle yet. Obviously, I still lack a little bit in terms of trigger finger speed with the controller and everything, because I was using a controller when I did this. It's kind of weird. I really enjoy playing Borderlands with the controller. I'm not exactly sure why. I think it's because I started with Melee Zer0 and it just kind of stuck, I found Melee more enjoyable with the gamepad than I did with the keyboard. And I definitely could play better with guns than I do with the controller. But it's not really that bad, since Borderlands isn't really a completely Twitch-based game or anything like that. And the enemies are almost designed around a controller and everything. But because they're that way, you could definitely get better performance out of a mouse, especially with these Jakobs weapons that have this fire as fast as you can pull the trigger effect. One thing that does often irritate me in Borderlands 2 is that throwing grenades, they sometimes get caught on corners and stuff like that, when I think they should be able to get through it. Longbow grenades I'm talking about. And that irritates me a little bit, because right there I wanted that grenade to get across the gap and it hit that little block or whatever. And sometimes that's actually ended up killing me via splash damage and stuff. It's always irritating when that happens. As you can see though, I'm working through these enemies without too much trouble using these Jakobs weapons right now. I was just looking for some more fun with Zer0. Zer0 is obviously a very diverse and dynamic character, which can be played in many different ways and still be effective, and I think that's one of the really, really cool things about Zer0. He's an awesome character. And so, I just threw together these three Jakobs weapons, and I also was using a Slag Pimpernel because I need a weapon for slagging. I guess theoretically I could have used a Slagga or something else, but Slag Pimpernel is my favorite slagging weapon. This particular Hyperion dude's being kind of a pain in my ass. I wanted him to get to a place where I could actually shoot him, but he's not really down for that until I round this corner, at which point he's going to charge at me a little bit. So I definitely found this guy to be irritating, and I took him out with the Twister. Twister's a great weapon for deception. Obviously, you only get one shot boosted when you're coming out of deception, and so shotguns are often really, really good for that because they have a high damage and you can get really close to an enemy and get that boosted damage, really up close to them and really kind of rip them in half. Another great weapon for that is the Orphan Maker or the Quad. Both of those are really nice. So, I'd say we're getting close to the halfway point in the map. Yeah, I guess so. We're going to have to get to this Constructor here in a minute, and I was kind of worried about taking out this Constructor. Usually I take him out with a Pimpernel, like a Corrosive Pimpernel, because that usually works pretty well. I've also, taken him out with melee quite a few times and stuff as well. But in this particular scenario, I decided that I was going to hang out under him, because I know if you hang out under him, he's not going to summon anything, and he's not going to fire any rockets off or anything like that. And so I was going to, or at least my plan was, to take out all of the surrounding enemies while he's kind of stuck in his little bounce, because that's what he does if you're under him. He's just going to do that fire bounce, which obviously isn't going to damage you when you're under the little awning like this. And so I was just going to wait for him to do this fire bounce, and I was going to take out all of these other enemies in the meantime to where I could deal with him when he was alone. And I figured that would be my best option here. I was most worried about this little section of the entire map, actually. So now that I have most of the other enemies killed, I'm going to use the Becca to try to deal some damage straight on his eye here. I want to stand far enough back that the 3 bullets are going to actually, spawn in and everything, the extra 3 bullets that the Becca has, but then that they would all hit him in the eye as well, because I was still standing close enough that they hadn't, really spread out. And by doing that, I'm actually able to wear through him pretty damn quickly. Not as quickly as I would have taken him out with melee or with a Corrosive Pimpernel, and especially a Corrosive Pimpernel or even a Liuta with Critical Ascension. Because obviously with Critical Ascension you'll wear through those guys very, very quickly. In addition to that, I was enjoying just playing through with these Jakobs weapons. I obviously did that Southpaw playthrough recently, and I appreciate any of you who watched that. That was kind of my first time playing with these 3 Jakobs weapons, and this is after a little bit of practice. I had done a few maps and just a couple different challenges, and I really like Heroes Pass, so I decided to run through here with these Jakobs weapons and see how I would do. I know that this map does offer several unique challenges that you don't really find too many other places in Borderlands 2, so it was nice to come in here and get myself into some precarious scenarios where I'd have to kind of figure out how to work through them with these weapons that I'm not entirely too familiar with. I do really like the Maggie. The Maggie's my favorite, but I found that I was using the Becca and the Twister more often than I was using the Maggie. So now that this guy's almost dead here, I'm going to go ahead and shoot him to finish him off. I think when I was shooting him earlier, I was a little bit too close, that my 3 bullets weren't actually spawning in yet, because in some other runs that I had done through here, where I wasn't recording, I remembered taking him out a little bit quicker than I had just taken him out there, so I don't think I was standing quite far enough back for the 3 bullets to spawn in, and so if I had got the spacing down just a little bit better, I probably would have ended him a little bit quicker. The Becca is really fun to use. I had some friends who recommended the Becca to me a while back, and I, looked at it and I was like, yeah, the Becca's pretty cool, but it's not something I really enjoy. The more I use the Becca, the more it actually, encourages me to use it. The more I use it, the more I fall in love with it. It is an awesome weapon. That being said, the Maggie's still cooler, but I don't think it's better. I should try this Jacob build out with the mouse. Now that I think about it, I want to do some mouse playing around with this, because I know that I could fire that mouse pretty damn quickly and stuff. So obviously there are, any competitive shooters that I play, I always end up playing that with mouse and keyboard, because it is definitely the superior option in those scenarios. And I do well in those games. I'm not going to say I'm the best at any of those games or anything like that, but I usually maintain positive kill-death ratios and stuff like that, so I don't know. I'll have to try it out and see how I do. So, eventually I am going to have to play more of Borderlands pre-sequel. I can't wait until they get that game to a, playable difficulty and everything like that. They've announced that UVHM is coming, but I don't know when it's coming or anything like that. I hope it comes out eventually. I am also very excited for Aurelia, or however you're going to pronounce her name, the character who's actually going to have a sniping skill tree. I do think it's very, very ridiculous that they decided to release Borderlands the pre-sequel without a sniper type character playable at launch, and also without UVHM at launch. UVHM is definitely something that should always be included in Borderlands games at launch for the future, and I hope they realize that, because if you look at the Steam charts right now, you can just go check them out. There are more people playing Borderlands 2 at almost all times than there are people playing Borderlands the pre-sequel. And being that Borderlands 2 is on a heavy sale right now during the Steam sale that's going on, I think that that's going to get even more exaggerated. There were more people playing Borderlands 2 at the end of the last Steam sale than there were playing Borderlands the pre-sequel at launch. And I don't know. It seems like Borderlands the pre-sequel probably isn't as popular or, relevant as they were hoping it was. And I hope that they realize that some of the things they did in Borderlands the pre-sequel are things that should never be repeated in a Borderlands game. It definitely seems to me that they made some big mistakes there. I don't know. I don't want to say that, the customer's not right or something like that. You always hear the cliche that the customer is always right. But in this case, I think that a lot of your average Borderlands 2 players don't agree with what's actually, been implemented in Borderlands the pre-sequel. I think that they catered to a very vocal minority in a lot of the design for Borderlands the pre-sequel, and tried to do a lot of silly fan service things that I don't think really worked out well for the game. And I think it was definitely a step backwards for the series. I don't want to be too critical of it, because I understand that right now it's an unfinished game. With the way 2K and Gearbox, really kind of design these games now, they're definitely made to be, kind of completed with DLC and stuff, and I think that's a terrible practice. Games should be complete when they're released, and then DLC should add to it. They shouldn't release half a game and then build to a full game eventually. I think that that's definitely the wrong way to do gaming, but it's kind of what the industry is moving towards, unfortunately. Maybe something will happen that reverses that trend, but as far as I can tell right now, I only see that trend growing, not shrinking. And as depressing as that is, I guess it's something that we'll just have to know and deal with, but it's not what I prefer, that's for sure. I'm getting pretty close to the end of this map here. I was trying to find this enemy that's probably stuck under this bridge. I assume it's a surveyor or something, but I can't really find it, so we're going to run down here and get ready to bore the super badass Constructor. And after I take out the couple Sergeant loaders and that super badass Constructor, I will definitely go ahead and show you my gear and skill build. As always, guys, I do thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. I know that this might not have been the most exciting or, interesting video, but as I'm working here with these new Jakobs weapons that I've never really used too much before, I definitely wanted to give, the true Zer0 fans some insight as to how I thought these weapons were and everything like that. And I'm definitely really enjoying them. And as I learn to get a little bit better with them, maybe I'll do a couple other maps with them as well. As always, guys, like I said, I thank you very much for watching. If you haven't yet taken the time to subscribe, please do so. I'd really appreciate that. Yeah, so I guess there are some more enemies that I take out after this, but I decided, to kind of cut the video off here, because I don't want it to be like 18 minutes long or something like that. 13 minutes for a video like this is probably running a little bit long anyway. So like I said, guys, thank you very much for watching. The gear and skill build's coming up very soon, and I do hope to catch you next time. Bye, guys.